Hey everyone, it's Four Gun Guy, and today I want to talk to you about a little bit kind of a technical subject, and it's something that you hear at the range all the time, right? You might be sitting there and there's a group of guys and they're talking, and someone says, "Yeah, my SDs are 4 and my ESs are around 8," and blah 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 blah, and all of a sudden they say, "But yeah, hey man, get on the glass behind me because I can't hit that 900-yard target for some reason." So I'm going to cheat a little bit and grab my iPad here. But what I want to talk to you about is let's go over what standard deviation and extreme spread are, right? What they really mean, and then we'll look at some real life examples of that. Then I want to talk about my journey, and then I want to really show you some ballistics differences. So when we say you have an SD of 5 and I have an SD of 10 and your ES is 8 and my ES is 12, right? How does that really relate? What does that really mean when we're reaching out to 700, 800, 900, 1,000 yards? And then we'll have some final thoughts. So if you're ready to run down this rabbit hole, let's get to it. Let's talk about what standard deviation and extreme spread really mean. So I'm going to read kind of some definitions here. Extreme spread and standard deviation are metrics used in shooting to measure the consistency of ammunition muzzle velocity. Remember that, muzzle velocity. ES is the difference between the fastest and slowest shots. Period, end of story. 10 string shot, 20 string shot, a round, 40 string round, doesn't matter. It's the highest and the lowest velocities out of the muzzle of those strings, okay? Then SD measures how much shots vary from the average velocity. So we take 40 shots, get the average of those 40 shots, and then how much do shots vary from that average, right? And we're going to see this in a little bit. Lower numbers indicate higher consistency. So lower SDs, lower ESs indicate lower or better consistency, right? So standard deviation alone, definition, a statistical measure of how individual shot velocities vary from the average. We just said that. A lower SD, example, under 10 to 15 feet per second for precision shooting, means most shots are very close to the average, leading to more predictable performance. It offers a good indication of overall uniformity than extreme spread. Because extreme spread, you might have one way out here and one way out here, and you go, "Oh, this is all a bunch of crap." Maybe those are the only two shots and everything else is pretty close together. So let's look at an example of standard deviation here. So I'm going to bring up a chart, just a normal, this is called a normal distribution curve. That's what this is. Don't get glossy-eyed on me. We'll go through this pretty quickly. Really what this is saying is, and you can read it down here, right? If you look at the dark blue, the very two dark blue kind of columns in this graph that say 34.1 and 34.1, what this is saying is for normal distribution, those two blue sections account for 68% of the set of the entire population, right? So if we are within one standard deviation, whatever shots are within one standard deviation, all of those represent about 68% of our entire population of shots, okay? If you go one more column out there to where it says 13.6 on either side, that's two standard deviations from the average. Remember, we're measuring from that average, from the center of it. And that's saying that 95% of your shots, if they fall within two standard deviations, 95% of your shots, right, are within two standard deviations of that mean. What does all this really mean? We're going to see here in just a second, real life. And then of course you have the final 3 standard deviations out, which account for 99.7 of all the rest of your shots. Or mean that 99.7 of your shots are within 3 standard deviations. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of talk to that. And now if we bring the extreme spread into play here, you can see that if I have 1 or 2 shots way over here and 1 or 2 shots way over here, they can start to affect that bell curve, right? So now let's go on to my journey and talk about how I started and where I ended up. I wasted a lot of ammo and a lot of barrel life chasing those numbers, standard deviation and extreme spread, a lot. And there's really no need to do it. So let's go through this real quickly. You get a new rifle. You put a new barrel on your rifle, let's say. And you need to, number one, get your cartridge set to that new barrel, right? I'm assuming you don't have to do any changes to your cartridge because your gunsmith, if he's like mine, you hand him some of your loaded cartridges and some of your fired cartridges, cases, and he's going to do a great job. But now you're going to break in a new barrel. Let's not go down the conversation of, do you break in a new barrel? Do you waste the ammo on it or not? You get out there, you take your cartridge, you've worked up your load, and the first thing you're going to do is check groups. 100 yards, which powder load, which seating depth is giving you the best group, okay? Then you're going to go from there. You're going to look at that. You're taking these numbers along that journey. So let's assume the barrel is broken in. You're taking these numbers along that journey. So every time you do those things, and you've seen videos of mine, if you haven't, please look at my reloading library, because I've walked through a couple instances of which load and seating depth is the best for this cartridge in this rifle. But here's where people start to make a mistake. They may have a good group, let's say 1/4 inch group. Number one, they keep trying to go to a 0-inch group. Stop. Just stop right there. Okay? Stop it. Then they have SDs of 10, ESs of 14. That's not good enough because they talked to Joe over here and Joe said he's got ESs of 4 or SDs of 4 and ESs of 8. I got to be like Joe. No, you don't. Stop. Okay? Get to a point to where everything comes together and it's good. A 1/4 inch group with a 10 SD and a 16 ES is really good. Especially, what are we going to do next? What are we going to do? We're going to true that dope. If I'm hitting a 900 yard truing bar at 900 yards, remember what this is said in the beginning. The definition was elevation, right? SDs reduce elevational spread. Forget about wind, elevation. So if I can impact that 900 yard steel, I have a 1/4 inch group on paper at 100 yards. My SD is 10, my ES is 14, 16. I'm golden. I'm good. I call it a day for me and my shooting. I'm good with it. We're not wasting any more ammo or anything else. Because now, let's talk about what this all really means with real numbers. Let's start with a very simple example. And it's going to be a 10-shot string. I'll put it up right here. It's going to be a 10-shot string. And one thing I want to say is when you get out there and you start looking at this, if you go to the range and say, today I'm going to take a reading. If you own a swimming pool, what do you do once a week? You test it, right? Or once every 3 days, or once every 2 days, or if you're like some people I know, once every day. Anyway, you're doing the same thing here, right? It's when we tune up for a match, when we go up and start practicing, we'll hook our Garmin up to the rifle and we'll run some shots in practice and we'll check our stats, our SDs and our ESs, just to make sure things are still within the guardrails of where we want them to be, right? So when you're doing that, the first thing I would tell you is don't take the first shot into consideration. Maybe don't take the first 3 or 4 shots into consideration, because the first shot is your cold bore shot, and it might take 3 more shots for your barrel to get to where it needs to be consistent, okay? So in this example, as you can see, look at the first 10-shot string. The very first shot, now this is in a 6.5 Creedmoor running very slow, 2,600 feet per second. And this is a gas gun, by the way. 2,600 feet per second, okay? If you look down below in that 10-shot string, the SD is 8.42. That's not bad. The ES, however, is 30, okay? That's not really good for PRS, all right? And for a gas gun, that's probably really kind of okay. So you see that the high and the low down there, the low is 26, the high is 2630. That's our ES, extreme spread, low and high. The SD is 8.42. Okay, well, now you're going to read that and you're going to go, holy crap, Tony, 8.42, that means it's 8.42 standard deviation. No. Stop. What this is saying is, one standard deviation for us, for this example, is 8.42 feet per second, which means that whatever shots fall between our average of 2624 and 2632 or 2616 represent 65% of the shots we're going to have in this string, right? 2 standard deviations would mean that it would be 17 feet per second. So anything within 2641 and 2607 would be 95% of our shots. 95% of our shots. So we're still pretty good there, right? We're still pretty good. But now let's flip this and say that first shot was a cold bore shot. Take that out of the equation. Because even in a match, right, you're going to have time to tune up in the morning. You're going to run that barrel up and you're going to be ready. So if we take that very first shot out that was an outlier, now look what we get. Wow. We get our SD drops to 1.76. It's pretty good. We get our extreme spread of 6 feet per second. That's pretty darn good, especially for a 6.5 gas gun. So this is just an example of how I want you to start looking at things. Don't hook that chronograph up, or if you do, just realize that maybe the first 1 to 5 shots are going to be out of the norm. So when you get back to the gun room, you can edit that and take those shots out. You may have some flyers on the high side too. I wouldn't really touch those, because that's indicating something is happening as you're shooting that string. It could be a case or a cartridge that maybe you didn't get the seating depth right. Maybe you dropped a 1/10 of a grain of powder less or something like that. Something happened. Maybe the primer isn't right. So you could keep those in there. If you have 1 or 2 of them, maybe you do take them out. I leave that up to you. I generally leave the high stuff in. Now, let's look at another example that's a little more in depth. Now we're looking at a 40-shot string. This is, again, 6.5 Creedmoor, running fairly slow for what I've run, but this is my gas. This is this gas gun, by the way. And I generally run this kind of slowish, on the slowish side. You'll see that up there in the upper corner, I have one SD, one standard deviation, represents 5.65 feet per second. Okay? Two standard deviations is 11.31 feet per second. The ES was 16, pretty good. The high was 2640, the low was 2624. Okay? And then down here in the graph, what I have is one standard deviation. So if you look at this, this is really what this is saying, isn't it? It's saying one standard deviation means that 68% of all my shots are going to be within 5.65 feet per second of my average of 2633. We're pretty good here. We're pretty darn good with this load. And the cartridge synced up with this rifle, right? I'm happy with this. I'm very happy with this. So yeah, don't look at things like this, guys, and go, I have an SD of 5.65. God, I think I can get that down. Don't bother. Don't waste the money and don't waste the barrel life. And especially the ES. People are so hung up that an ES has to be below 10. It's great if it is. If you fall into that because the stars are aligning and everything looks great and you're doing everything perfectly, I think it's fantastic. But please don't sweat a 16 ES on something like this, because you're going to see here in a second, it doesn't really matter that much. Let's go look at that. Now, as part of looking at what these differences really mean in a match, in practice, hunting, whatever, I want to show you one more thing. And this was a video I did, gosh, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. It was a comparison of my hand loading 6.5 Creedmoor rounds with 140 grain ELDMs against 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other off-the-shelf ammunitions. I'm amazed today that these off-the-shelf ammunitions, when I bought them, I thought they were expensive. Oh man, today they're like 3 times what they were back then. But I want you to look at something. My loaded cartridges that I did, my SDs were 3.16, my ESs were 11. You see the average velocity, and you can see the MOA of group 1 of a 5-shot, 3-shot, 5-shot, and 3-shot of 2 separate groups. Now, my accuracy there was not that good, but this was out of a factory rifle. So it wasn't really that good of a rifle, but these are good results. Look at the results from the other off-the-shelf ammo. This should start to show you what you can expect from off-the-shelf ammo, the results. For example, the white box Hornady ELDM 147 grains, SD was 9.36 with an ES of 34 feet per second. Okay. A couple of these others were just horrible. That Winchester, I think that was the Winchester Express or something like that, 142 grain. That was the most expensive in the group, and it shot the worst. And then you had Nosler Trophy, Federal Non-Typical. So yeah, you had some things that were very interesting there that off the shelf just didn't do very well. But again, what do these numbers really, really mean? Now let's look at that. Let's start with the 17 feet per second difference that was close to what we had with this gas gun. Now, this is a BRA. This is a 6 millimeter, but it's the same concept. It'll map the same. This is with a 107 Sierra Match King bullet. This is actually what I shoot. Now, I just used an online calculator here, so this isn't from my specific rifle, but let's look at this. Let's look at 2750 feet per second, all right? I'll put these charts up here. At 2750 feet per second, let's look at the elevation in inches for 600 yards. See it? It's 86.34. That's the bullet drop. 86.34 inches. Now, if you look at the 2767, 17 feet per second faster. 600 yards at 85.12. That's a difference of an inch and a quarter. Inch and a quarter at 600 yards with a 17 feet per second difference. 600 yards, okay? If we look at, let's go to 900, because usually the matches I shoot stay within 900 yards. 259.82 at 2750, 256.05 at 2767. So what is that? That's three and 3/4 inches. So probably about like that, I would think, right? At 900 yards. And you're probably shooting at a 2 MOA target, I think, probably at that distance. That's what we usually shoot at. Once in a while, they'll put a 1 MOA out there. 1 MOA at 900 yards is going to be about 10 inches. 2 MOA is going to be about, what, 18 and a half, 19 inches. So they'll probably put a 20-inch target out there. So 20-inch target, you've got 3.5 to work with, okay? So that's the difference between 17 feet per second. It's not making that big of a difference if your SDs and ESs are high to you, what you think are high, okay? Let's look at another one here. Let's look at a big one. Let's look at a 30 feet per second difference. 30 feet per second. Now we're going to look at 2750 to 2780. Let's do the 600 again. 600 is 86.34, like it was. And the 2780, 30 feet per second faster, is 84.1. Now you're looking at a 1 or 2.25 inch difference, about that, at 600 yards. At 900 yards, we're looking at 259 for the slow round, and 253 for the faster round. That's 30 feet per second faster. You're looking at about 6 3/4 inches, which I'm going to say is probably about there, right? 6 3/4 inches at 30 feet per second difference. Again, what I want you to be thinking in your head is, do you really think you're going to shoot the very slowest round and the very fastest round one right after another in either way? Maybe, but if you do, it's going to be that once in the match shot probably. And yeah, you may miss, right? If you don't have your dope right, you may miss. But if you have your dope right, then does that 6 3/4 inches matter that much? If you've trued your dope, so at 900 yards, you're hitting a water line on average, then that should be absorbed into that, is what I'm trying to say. Really, guys, I'm just trying to kind of set your minds at ease on this stuff. I have a 100-yard example here. I'm not even going to go into that because it's just ridiculous. And you'll never have a 100-yard difference in your center fire stuff. You just won't, because if you're reloading, you should darn sure be down around the 20. ES should be about your threshold for not being good. And then you want to adjust things to bring that down, right? That's really what you want to do. So let's talk about some things that can affect this, though. I mentioned them a little bit in the beginning, but let's talk about some things here at the end, because it's going to be some things that I hear a lot of shooters talk about as well. Yeah, so one of the things we're going to talk about is I get a lot of chiding from people on the my reloading list that I have. This list that has you know, the 14 or 15 steps to it for my reloading that I keep track of everything on. And look, I don't do all those things, but they're just in a list. It's a good checkbox, right? But some guys, and they're joking with me, I know they are, but they go, oh, like Tony's 30 item checklist that he uses for reloading. And some guys I talk to it's funny, I don't think they do this, but they say they do this. What they'll say is, yeah, I don't really prep my brass. Yeah, I just resize it and load it. Okay, all right. So you don't clean it. You don't, do you chamfer and deburr? Do you do any of that? Do you, what about the primer pocket? Do you clean the primer pocket? Lightly, like I do, or not at all? A lot of guys don't clean the primer pocket at all. And I'm not saying you should, I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm not saying you should chamfer and deburr. I'm not saying you shouldn't. Not saying you should, well, you should trim. You should check that all the time. But like the chamfer and deburr, let's look at what can happen here, okay? This is from AMP, the people that make my annealer, right? And I actually talked to them about a couple things when I was at a show one time. One of those was lubing the inside of the neck before seating the bullet. They said they did a 1,000 round test. It made zero difference lubing the inside of the case neck before seating your bullet. So I don't do that. But I do chamfer and deburr. Let's look at what happens when they take a case. Here's a great example from them. I'll put it up here. They took a case, it's a 308, it's a virgin 308, has not been chamfered or deburred. It was sized. And this chart shows when they seated the bullet with their hydraulic seater. And you look at this chart. This thing's a mess. And what it's basically saying is, because we didn't chamfer and deburr, that bullet hung up on the very edge mouth of that case until it reached a certain pressure, and then it popped that bullet in. That's what that first little jump is on the left-hand side of this chart, right? Then it got to a point to where what they're saying here is, let's see, also visible when the bottom of the bullet seats beyond the sized portion of the neck. This is indicated by the straight drop in the force at the 0.16 mark, which is about halfway to the right on the x-axis. The seating force then levels out until the bullet is fully seated. Then there's two traces above all of this, a red and a blue one, that indicate what? An anomaly, two anomalies. But in this case, if I was really shooting, say a long range match or something like that, those two rounds would probably be my fouling rounds in the morning, right? I'd set them aside, I'd mark them, they'd be my fouling rounds. Now let's look at another example. I'll put this one up. This is of a 6BRA loading where the case has been chamfered, deburred, and really made ready for reloading. You can see here how little pressure it took to get that bullet to start going down into the neck of that case. And then you can see that everything is pretty consistent here. And what do I always say about consistency? That's our goal. Our goal is to be consistent. Not consistently bad, but consistent, right? So this could really have something to do with your SDs and ESs, right? In that 308 example, let's just bring that over to a 6BRA. I don't chamfer, I don't deburr, and all of a sudden when I'm reloading that bullet, I'm getting that other chart, and that might mean that, yeah, that case is really holding on to that bullet. Maybe I don't get the bullet tension that I'm looking for, right? So it's all over the place, and that can affect your SDs and ESs. And of course, everything else can affect those as well, right? It could be the powder that we use. It could be the bullet that we use. It could be how dirty is our barrel. How deep have we seeded our primers? Are we crushing them? Are they exposed? There's so many things that can affect the SD and the ES that, you're just trying to get everything down that you can to take that variable out of the equation of affecting it. So let's have some quick final thoughts and we'll put this one to bed. Well, guys, thanks for hanging in there on this one. It's just one that I keep hearing all these people talk about things, and I'm like, number one, don't chase that stuff. Get to good. My buddy Jose and I still want to do a video with him because he and I have talked about what does good look like, right? What does that nice sweet spot look, which I think is where I am now in the sport, that I grab my rifle, I have my reloaded ammo, I know it's good for me, and it will hit the target. Now the rest is up to me. But for this, I want you to focus on your cartridge prep, your cartridge load. Then we're going to look at the SDs, the ESs, as we true our dope, right, which starts at the 100-yard mark with the groups. And again, I am not looking for one hole at 100 yards, guys. I am not looking for that. I'm looking for a good, consistent group. I'm looking for, if I send 15 shots in there, 5 3-shot groups, I want them to all end up looking the same. Did you hear what I just said? I'm not sending 15 shots in the same place. I said 5 strings of, say, 3 shots. I have 5 dots on a piece of cardboard. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I'm looking for the consistency across those 3-shot strings. That's what I'm looking for. It doesn't do me any good, this is my opinion, to put a big old circle out there and fire 15 rounds at it. I don't care. I'm not going to post the picture of, look at this 15-round group. I don't care about that. I get my 15-round group if I superimpose all those 5 3-shot groups on top of each other. I can get the same result. But what I'm looking for is the consistency across those 3-shot groups. So there's that. Then we're going to do our dope, right? We're going to take our dope out to 6, 7, 8, 9, 1,000 yards if you want to go out that far. I do just to check it, but I true my dope at about 850 to 900 yards. Make sure I'm hitting that truing bar, because if it's a 1 MOA truing bar at 900 yards, that means it's about this high. It might be this wide, but it's this high. And if I can centerline that, on average, even maybe a little above and a little below, I'm fine with that. Then I know my dope is good, right? And so from there, your SDs and ESs will start to fall in place, and they should fall in place, because the very reason that you're hitting that truing bar at 900 yards is because of what? Because of those numbers we just looked at. Because your SDs and ESs are, in fact, in order. So that's all I want you to really, really focus on here. So number 1, don't listen to the hype. Please don't listen to the hype. Don't go down the rabbit hole wasting ammo and barrel life. I just did a video on barrel life. Don't waste barrel life chasing this stuff. Now, let's say that you're, well, it's not up here, but let's say I've got my 6BRA. That thing right now has got about 2,200 rounds on it. I'm going to start really looking at it. Let's say that you go to practice, you do those 5 3-shot groups, and all of a sudden you're saying, 1/2 inch, 5/8 inch, 5/8 inch, 3/4, half. I may start looking at things. I might need to adjust the seating depth that I have. Maybe I have eroded those lands a little bit, and maybe I will adjust that to bring that group back in. But I'm also going to look at what that does to those SDs and ESs, right? So all of this kind of plays together, and it's all like almost one big equation. I've thought about doing that one day, just kind of drawing up an equation, and then what does that answer look like, and what is the range for that? I still might, but who knows? But anyway, I just wanted to run all this by you. Don't be afraid when people start talking about standard deviation and extreme spread. All it is telling you how tight your stuff is. That's it. Well, hey, thanks for watching, everyone. I've got some good scope reviews in a box over here. There's a brand new scope that a company sent me that I'm really excited to review. And I did order the NX6 with my own money from Night Force, and that's still on back order. But when that comes in, we're going to have a good review of that as well. Thanks for watching, everyone. Keep those SDs and ESs good. And until next time, shoot straight.